All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Susan. I'm sorry, this morning we had some issues with the technology, so we're like 7 minutes late, but I'm sure hopefully I can finish my presentation on time. So today we're going to talk about I'm going to talk about some strategies and skills for successful English performance. Before I start introducing some detailed skills, I want to introduce my teaching philosophy. It's actually this guy, he's from Russian. He was from Russia, so you shouldn't have problem to understand his original work. This is my doctoral degree's focus. So I studied sociocultural theory. It's a very useful and complete theory to guide teaching and learning. So one of the concepts I really like and kind of guide my teaching practice is the unification of contradictions. So as you can see on this PowerPoint, you see this claw hammer. So it can be used to put a nail in. At the same time, it can be also used to pull a nail out. So unification of contradictions, push in and pull out. Same thing with the pencil. We can use pencil to create art. We also can use pencil to erase, but I'm sure you'd rather just use a nice eraser. So with this methodology of his theory bearing in mind, my understanding about education, teaching, really is the point one here in my mind. This is my teaching philosophy. Teaching is learning, and the learning is teaching. We're teaching at the same time we're learning constantly. And students are supposed to learn from us, but the best learning actually can be realized through teaching. So I will mention this philosophy later, with my strategies introduction. And also, I want just to briefly introduce my teaching background, or what kind of students do I have? Because I have seen the surveys, most of you are middle school, high school teachers. I always teach adults. So basically they're college level students, first year and second year. And when they study English, they definitely have different motivations. Most of them are not English majors. So they study English and hopefully they can study their majors through their second language. So students really have different motivations. Some students want to really form this native level English performance. Some students don't care that much. They only aim at passing grade, and if they can understand instruction, they can do multiple choices, they will be satisfied. At the same time, my teaching environment is a little bit different from yours, because your teaching environment is a non-English speaking environment. I used to teach English in a non-English speaking environment, but right now I teach in America. So English speaking environment is there, is available. It can bring benefits, but it's not like it has to be the key factor to achieve great English performance. All right, so I'm going to start. I separate my presentation into skills, but actually as teachers, especially as English teachers, we cannot separate skills. But for my purpose, I just want to divide 4 to 5 skills, including TOEFL, as I have mentioned in my webinar introduction. So I will go through each skill one by one, but you can see after you hear my introduction, you will see a lot of times you actually combined speaking, listening, reading, writing all together. So several speaking activities I recommend, so you can adjust your teaching materials because you have different learners and your students might have different needs. So my number 1 recommendation is just read aloud. And with the technology, ask your students to record whatever they're reading. Sometimes students, we just say, oh, they're shy, they don't want to talk. It's not, that is one factor, but it's more than that. Sometimes students are not used to a new language pronunciation, especially when in their native language, certain pronunciation manners don't exist. That will make it very difficult for them to just practice all those muscles and get used to the certain kind of pronunciation manners. So I usually, if I teach speaking, I always start with just read out loud, and you hear your own pronunciations, you hear your own tones. Does that speaking or reading carry a lot of your own native language accent? That's okay, but you have to get used to the English pronunciation ways. So reading materials, you can include your textbooks, students' own writing, students' summaries of reading, again, so they can, you teach students, they have reading materials. So ask them to summarize their reading, but in the form of speaking instead of writing. So the second step I will ask my students to do is to converse and record their conversation as well. Because the recording really gives them this formality, really gives them this responsibility, because they want to show, they want to present their best performance if they record their conversation or reading. So as teachers, I suggest you assign topics. If you don't assign topics, it will be difficult for you to listen to the conversation as well. And you assign groups as well. Basically, you should assign students with similar level of speaking together and finish this conversation. So this part maybe sounds a little bit not that authentic, because a lot of students will write down conversation first, then maybe they read their transcript. But still, I can see benefits of doing this, especially through online learning. So number one, if you do this converse and record, students learn how to listen. Listening for non-native speaker or foreign language speakers is very important. But I find it sometimes when I teach in the classroom, a lot of students do not have patience to listen to their peers. They barely have the patience to listen to their instructors. But if you assign students in a conversation group, they have to listen to each other so they know when they can start their talk. So listening is one advantage. Practice their listening habits is one advantage I noticed. And also, for this kind of conversation, their social greetings can be formed so naturally. So it's very natural for them to say, how are you doing? How have you been? Nice to talk to you. See you next time. So those kind of easy social talks through repetitive practice. But it is still, is one of the social skills students should have, instead of a silence or, it's blank face when people say bye-bye to you. So the third one I really like, I think is very useful, especially right now. We do a lot of online teaching. My students all love it, and you have fun to grade students' work as well. So you can find short YouTube videos and ask students to describe the videos. So I recommend Mr. Bean or Tom and Jerry. There are a lot of free short videos on YouTube. You don't need to pay anything. But be careful about, do not include videos with a lot of conversation, because if you have a video with a lot of conversation, students tend to memorize all the characters' lines. So they want to perform well, but you don't give them the freedom or space to create their own thinking, then they just focus on all those lines the characters are speaking in the video. So that is not the purpose for them to practice speaking. And another good part about introducing Bing and Tom and Jerry, those characters all have names. Like my previous webinar said, in writing, I don't like students using pronouns like he, she, they. They're not clear to me. He can mean Tom or Jerry. Mr. Bean and so many things you can refer to. So I'd rather students use Mr. Bean, a thief, an officer, Tom, Jerry, Jerry's best friend. So when they're using noun-pronouns, everything, the information will be conveyed more clearly. Okay, so I want to show you a video. So basically the video should be short, and it would be the best for you to find the video, include a complete story. So let's have a little bit of fun. It's 3 minutes, but I think you won't think the 3 minutes too long. What happened?
Excuse me. Could you, if you please so kind, just press the red button. Okay. Right up to it. Good. Just try one more. Turn round. Actually, face them. Go around and face the window.
Right, Thompson. No rush.
So you see, this is a video, you really don't hear a lot of characters talking. So students have a lot of freedom to describe the video. It's a funny video. They understand the thing. There's a lot of body languages in the video. And also they can practice some vocabulary because they cannot use it to refer to trash can. They cannot use he to refer to thief, because Mr. Bean can be also called he. So basically, in order to finish this assignment, they have to, to find all those proper nouns to describe the video. So my next recommendation, the skill is a little bit more academic than the YouTube videos I just showed you. So basically you ask your student to summarize, because summarizing is one of the most important skills for academic studies. So you ask your student to summarize listening from interesting source materials. So basically we have this textbooks. I really like this textbook. So we have 10 videos. Then videos are designed clearly to show the structure of the lecture. And the speakers are very clear. It's not TED Talk. TED Talk to me sometimes are too difficult and too long. And the materials also are beyond students' understanding. So if you have a good textbook in your school, then use that as assignment. Or if you're teaching listening, then you don't have to use that materials just for your listening class. You can definitely use that teaching listening materials for your speaking. So I will show you just a small, maybe 30 seconds of this video I use for my students. You can see the speaker is very slowly, and each step you also have a pause. So you basically unconsciously train students to understand a formal academic lecture has very clear structure design.
Robots. They once seemed like science fiction, but today, robots are part of everyday life. So what do we use robots for? To answer this, we'll look at examples of where robots are used today and the tasks that they're performing. But first, I'd like to review a basic definition of robot. A robot is a machine, a mechanism that can move automatically by itself. Some of the first robots in the early 1900s were controlled by radio signals. Since the 1940s, scientists have made robots that can be programmed, that can be controlled by a computer brain.
So you see, this is a 7 minutes video, but between each part, you see this blank screen. It gives students some space or some time to digest, to figure out, okay, the structure starts with a definition, or it starts with an interesting story first. Then after you ask them to do the speaking assignment, they have to fully understand this listening material. But usually it's very unlikely they're going to write down or transcribe exactly every sentence the speaker says. So they have to use their own understanding to summarize. So you practice your students' speaking ability, also summarizing ability at the same time. And the last one, of course, is one of the most popular ones, and we always ask our students to do presentations, especially if our class size is small. It is possible we have 10 or 15 students and one student do a presentation, and the rest of the students will be audience, then it can do peer evaluation. So several types of presentations include persuasive. So you choose a side why and you persuade us. Informative, students can introduce their cultural background, stories. I teach international students. This method, this type of presentation is very popular and usually can get most audience interest because they just want to know, okay, so what is happening in Japan or Korea or Saudi Arabia? The next one, problem solutions, usually for advanced learners. So raise a problem, do some research, then hopefully you can find some solutions. And the last one is benefits versus drawbacks lectures. So one like robots or online gaming. Is online gaming always bad? Not true, because research shows online gaming can train students' spatial ability. So benefits and drawbacks, give them a controversial topic and they can find materials for benefits or drawbacks. So those for speaking, teaching, A lot of them can be easily used online with technology help. Your grading will be more interesting as well. Next part, I'm going to introduce listening. I only have one skill I want to share with you. So I told you my teaching philosophy is teaching is learning and learning is teaching. So for the listening part, I really trained my students to be the owner of the listening materials. So I asked them to design their own listening materials. Several benefits, very obviously, is they have great learning interest, because I will tell them, after you record your videos, we will post on this Canvas or Blackboard, it used to be, then we'll listen to your materials and do exercise. Sometimes they have to design questions as well. So also you can hear these different videos to students can use this chance to share cultural insights, because sometimes the topics can be various. Students choose topic they're interested in after they're talking to me. And practice writing and editing, especially editing. Before they want to record their own reading and speaking, they don't want to make mistakes. I have never seen students pay that much attention to my feedbacks, only through this project, because they are proud they will be the owner of this listening materials. And understand, the next one is they reinforce their understanding of transition devices. I will show you a video from one of my students. You can hear that first, second, at the beginning. You hear that when they're talking about those transition devices, they put more focus. So if they realize when I say first, so I want to get your attention. When I say second, I am adding a new idea. So if they have this attention or intention to get listeners' attention, then when they're listening to other materials, they will pay more attention to those transition devices so they can get the major idea. The next one, of course, they pay special attention to pronunciations. I have seen my students practice again and again and again before they record their final reading. So they want to sound good and sound like real listening materials. The last one, after they practice based on the transition devices, they definitely can understand and apply lecture structures better. So the next video, the next audio you're gonna hear, you can hear clearly, even students' English level is not that high yet. So I remember this student was probably low medium level student, and his lecture structure was clear. At the beginning, definition, so it's what. In the middle, again, what, damages, and the last one is how. How do I do this? How can I solve this problem? So it's clearly a very clear lecture structure, what, how. So, and when he presents this what, how, you can hear he used different transition devices. So I'll show you this one.
Plagiarism is a behavior if someone copies someone's story or ideas. For example, I write a story in a book and someone uses my story without mentioning my name. Then he is cheating. When someone uses a story or copies an idea, he should say where he takes it from. The problem of plagiarism can be harmful. First, it is stealing and it is hard for you to learn if you do it. For example, if someone copies someone's idea, he is stealing that person's work and saying that it is his work. It is hard for them to learn because they don't exercise their brain. They lost the chance to analyze and think. If they write a lot about their own ideas, they will learn how to write well. We can solve the problems by teaching students not to plagiarize. The school should teach the students what the plagiarism is. Also, they should teach the student how to write down where the information is from, so that student don't plagiarize. Second, if students plagiarize, they will be punished. Punishment will stop students from plagiarizing.
So the students talk about the plagiarizing and use his own words. You can hear that his vocabulary is not that advanced yet, but I see and I hear a very clear lecture structure. Of course, before you have this audio, you will do a lot of editing. You sit down with students, do editing work, and the student chooses topic, get an okay from you. Then after the students writes the transcripts, you will sit with the students and help the student get their writing better. So the challenges is looking for appropriate sample listening materials takes a lot of time. I know the YouTube, TED Talks, but mostly for English as a second language learner, EFL or ESL learners, TED Talks are too difficult. I think TED Talks are too difficult. All right. The next skill, reading. I have only one table here for you. Hopefully you can remember. Reading, students don't like it. When you teach it, it's also challenging because you have to put up with this silence in the classroom. Because you give them 20 minutes to read and they open their books and look at their books, you don't know if they're really reading or not. So it's difficult. It's challenging for me because I usually like an active atmosphere. I want to see student feedback. I want to see their facial expressions. I want to hear them. But reading, if you want to get answers, you have to read. Then reading is there inside their brain. But usually students sometimes are afraid of long academic reading. I include this table in my group work, or sometimes 2 students group, 3 students group. So they read and they just answer a few questions without complete sentences. So I would say parts. I didn't use a paragraph. So parts could be part 1, part 2, could be 2 paragraphs worked as an introduction, or 3 paragraphs work as a supporting idea 1, several paragraphs work as supporting idea 2, so they just write it down. And again, I love this WH words. I mentioned that in my previous webinars. Personally, I use that to organize my own thinking and writing and reading. So part 1, what WH question does this part 1 answer? It is a what, or it is a why, or it is a part of what and a part of why. So students can write it down there. Then keywords. So basically it's content words, noun, verb, subject, adjective, adverbs. No complete sentences are required. So figure of speech, I usually include that if I teach advanced students. If your students are not there yet, or you don't have to teach metaphor, simile, you don't have to include that column there. So this table is not overwhelming. When students see this table, there are no questions for them to answer. But if they can fill out those tables without too much problem, so basically they can see the reading materials are organized with the logical meanings, WH words, and with the keywords, they can pretty much understand the whole content of the reading passage. Then if you want to get a better result, so push them to read again, to push them to read for depth, then ask them to summarize. So if the article is not that difficult, ask them to summarize in verbal form. If the article is really important in your teaching, the article is long, then ask them to summarize the written in a written form. So also, again, based on the table, because they have done the work. So the general reading to get a major idea, the next one, they have to depend their grammar or writing to summarize the whole reading material. So the next one, writing. Actually, my previous webinar focused on this topic. So if you had listened to that lecture, so some of the content will be repetitive here. So for me, writing, I think lecturing is necessary. I don't know since when, sometimes when people talk about English learning or language learning, they always think about, oh, lecturing, are you sure? You know, you should do the students or focused teaching. The teacher really shouldn't play that much role there because your English is already good and your students need opportunities to practice. But for writing, I think lecturing is very important. I'd rather tell students all those shortcomings or poor writings look like in advance instead of just let them write. Then I spend so much time to grade and give them feedback, but they ignore. So that's the thing I don't like about teaching writing. So I spend a lot of time to do lecturing first. So my lecturing includes 3 parts: language control, organization, and content. So language control, basically respect and follow English structures. Like on the right corner, you see this wood block. It's like a game. If you are learning a second language, you need to follow the rule in the second language. So for example, with my native language, if I want to say what I'm doing right now, my sentence structure sounds like this. I today give a about second language learning webinar. So if I translate, I don't respect English sentence structure. Yeah, people do understand me, but they will say, that sounds not right. I understand you, but that's not good. So if you follow English sentence structure, basically you should say, today I am giving a webinar about the second language learning. Then everything sounds good, they understand you, then you are learning English at a native level. So that's, again, I want you, if you are teaching English, please train your students to respect and follow English sentence structures. And number 2 is organize your content by WH words. If you do the reading materials very often, students can see that, yes, the writing textbooks are organized by those WH words. That's the sample. Then if you want to write like them, you organize your writing by WH words. Then the next suggestion, read in all languages for content development, including native language. The knowledge you have, your students have towards the world, about the world, the more knowledge they have, the better they can write, because they have the depth, they have deeper understanding about the topic. The last one is you encourage your students to apply grammar through writing and describing photos. So my favorite word here is to describe. I think describe is better than translate. Translate, sometimes sentences sound very odd, but describing, follow the sentence structure, will make your reading and writing, listening and speaking more clear. So the last part, I want you guys to take a look at this one. For grammar, a lot of English teachers, remember last time, Dr. Saik talked about grammar teaching? So this is what I see, grammar application. On the right side of your screen, I found that online easily, very easily. Take a look on the right side. How many words do students need to write when they answer your question? So whoever is there is talking, please mute yourself.
Даня, тихо. Даня, не шуми, пожалуйста. Что, ласточка? Пойдем, пойдем.
Sorry. So you see the screen on the right side, the students only needed to write one word. As teachers, you did most of the work. You designed they. In Chicago for 20 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You wrote 6 words for them. They only need to write one word. It's unfair. But on the left side, you see, describe your first impression of BSU. Write a sentence to describe something Susan started doing last month and continues to do now. Yeah, you write a sentence and you're expecting a sentence back. So that's fair. You do 50% of work, students do 50% of work. But on the right side, the traditional exercise, you did 90% of work and students only need to fill in one word. And about the fun part. So when you say describe your first impression of BSU, you might get a lot of different answers. Some students like it, some students dislike it. But the second one on the right side, when you're writing one word, you see one correct answer. They have been in Chicago for 20 years, but most likely you will see they are, they had been, they would be, they were. You see one correct answer, but the rest of them could be all wrong answers. What's fun to be a teacher? You design 90% of work, you get one correct answer. Then the rest of them, you graded, most times you're facing mistakes. So think about it as grammar teacher or as English teacher, what kind of exercise should we provide? Ask them to apply their grammar in writing instead of them giving all those filling blanks. All those ideas come from you. They need to just fill in one blank. So the second thing, the same thing, fair and fun. You don't want to write too much, you don't want to do too much work, find photos. Ask a student to describe photos. Jack received an F, then you're teaching on real conditional. If he had reviewed last night, he would not have failed his exam. So naturally, but you could have different answer, like if he had not procrastinated last night, he would not have failed. So you have different answers, but see these online sources. This is a traditional. On real conditionals, you see this whole page. As teachers, we did so much work. We provide examples, we write the whole sentence. Exercise 1, we write the whole sentence. They need to only fill up one blank. Maybe on the right side, exercise 3, we write half a sentence. They finish the half a sentence. Exercise 4, we write the whole paragraph. It's all our work. And we still complain students don't understand how to use them correctly. But I need to ask you and ask myself, do I give them chance to apply? So that's the part I want you guys to think about it if you teach this grammar. We really encourage them to use more their learning through writing or describe. So in the end, I have 10 minutes left. I think my timing is very good. So TOEFL, based on the survey, some teachers are very interested in TOEFL preparation. Yeah, we love tests, don't we? So TOEFL tests, I still recommend their official website. I have checked through many websites. Yeah, there are a lot of so-called free materials, but those free materials usually only give you part of the test. So the rest of them, you want to see a complete test, you have to pay. Of course, there's no complete free materials here. So this is a website, because after this webinar, you will see we record this and, oh yeah, did I record it? Hopefully. Anyway, so you will see this website, then you can see all the links. So for the TOEFL preparation, patience, acculturation, solid language foundation, if you want to pass TOEFL. Get the practice books from TOEFL organization. Again, you can see a lot of free materials there, but they're really not free. So if you really feel like, oh, those books are really too expensive, I couldn't afford it, that's okay. You still can search some free materials, but the key word I want to remind you is here is PDF. So you just type in TOEFL free preparation PDF. So you only get PDF documents. Those documents, usually they're complete. So you don't have to go through and decide, okay, is this the end of the reading? Is this the end of the writing? You can see the 4 skills here. I said patience. I personally took a TOEFL test 14 years ago. Yeah, 14 years ago. It's a long time test, 20 minutes, 60, 90, 60, 80, and 50. You can see listening and reading, you have, range because sometimes they give you extra. That's designed by the computer. So for the speaking task, you have 6 tasks. For listening and reading, multiple choices. Some students like multiple choices. They don't have to write, but it requires a lot of knowledge. I will introduce that in the next slide. The writing, so 50 minutes, you write 2 essays. Actually, you need to write 2 essays. So the patience is, if you really want to take TOEFL, or your students are going to take TOEFL, ask them to, I don't know, to take some caffeine before they go there. Because when I was taking that test, I saw all the other students had a Red Bull on their table. And I didn't understand why at that time. So now I understand. After I finished taking the test, I did, okay, so that was really necessary because highly focused in front of computer, reading your second language more than 150 minutes requires a lot of patience and attention. So you see, these are 4 different kind of skills for the speaking. Integrated with reading and the listening, summarizing, open questions versus closed questions. Open questions could be describe your favorite vacation place. Closed questions could choose one. They give you 3 choices, A, B, C, choose one and tell the listener why you choose that one. The integrated task, usually students will have a reading or listening first, then they summarize. You see summarizing because TOEFL is for college students, and the summarizing, paraphrasing are just the key factors for the success at academic level. And for the listening, conversations, this part, acculturation. So almost all conversations happened on American campus. So if your native language does not have something like American campus have, even students understand every word of the conversation, they might still don't understand what's going on. So for example, in my native country, students they never need to reserve a study room for group discussion because they don't even have enough space for self-studying. But in American campus, reserving a study room for group discussion is very normal. So when something that happening, even students read the transcript, but they don't have this cultural background knowledge about reserving a studying room, they don't know how to answer. So acculturation, if you are training students to do this listening, now try to show them videos, try to explain that a little bit. Then if yourself have experience of studying abroad, sharing your experience with them, that will be very helpful. And the listening next part is lectures. Academic level, really wide fields. So it start from art, music, science, STEM, you name it. So this part really requires students wide knowledge of the world. It's all new knowledge in their mind, is answering the what question. And my recommendations, if you want to train your students a little bit more, ask them to watch more movies, documentary movies, BBC documentary movies, short movies, a little bit TED Talks. So yeah, it's again, or read in your native language or in English. basically you are encouraging your students to build up the world knowledge. So we are doing this at the same time. I really have no single way to point out, okay, so you read this book, you'll be fine to answer all the questions. It's no book can do that. And the reading, same thing, you will have 3 parts of reading exercise. You're reading for details. They sometimes ask you the meaning of the word, the meaning of a sentence, and meaning paragraph. Of course, they will give you a lot of context, so they're testing students' analyzing ability. And they insert a sentence, they give you a whole paragraph, they give you a new sentence and ask you, okay, so which part, if 1, 2, 3, 4, you choose a slot. So when you put the sentence in it, you can make the paragraph most logical. So this part is test students' logical ability. The last one, again, summarizing. I can see clearly the TOEFL test tests a lot of paraphrasing and summarizing ability. Okay, so they do not like students repeating the same word from listening and reading. Again, writing. Integrated with reading and listening. If you had participated in our training last year in Kazakhstan, you had that task already. So you had a reading passage, you also listened to a video, then you were asked to write a prompt. So, but the key here is if you train your student to TOEFL training, do not never quote original sentences from listening and reading, because if you quote, basically this exercise, they're checking your paraphrasing and summarizing ability. If you quote, then you lose a lot of points. The last one is independent writing. And most topics are why topic. So you choose a side and supporting your, and write a paragraph or 2 or 3 paragraphs to support your claim. And do remind your students, please do not think mistakes won't matter. Some of my students, they understand, oh, she speaks, oh yeah, I remember, I need to put an S there, but they never put it. They understand, they know, they just repeat it and make the same mistake. But that kind of repetitive or the same kind of mistakes on a writing TOEFL test will make them lose a lot of points. So this is the end of my webinar. I still have 5 minutes left. We will post this PowerPoint on the video, on the website we're building. So any questions? If you have any questions, you can type in the chat box. Okay. All right, so what was the task for students? So my task as a student is to ask them to design a listening material. So students will write down the topic they're interested in. So this student wrote down, I want to write about plagiarism, because in our institute, plagiarism is a really important topic for them. So I was like, that's a good topic. Then we spend time to writing, starting with writing. So he decided this plagiarism topic and he went home and did it as a homework. So we added his writing in class. Then, okay, everything looked good, not major grammar mistakes, depends on what kind of learners you have. Then he went home just to read this writing, Okay, so I received this recording. Then he designed 3 easy questions based on his recording. He would ask you, what does plagiarism mean? Number 2, multiple choices. What harms can plagiarism cause? He give you A, B, C, D. So all those samples, they have learning samples. They modify those samples. Then I played his audios in class, and the rest of his classmates did the homework he designed based on his audio. That's how I use that listening. So start with writing, then editing, then recording, then you playing, then group practicing. Any other questions? Yeah, again, please.
Everybody, I'd just like to thank Susan. I thought that was really wonderful today. And remember, we have another webinar next week, and it's going to be about best practices for distance learning.
Okay, thank you very much for your participation, and hopefully I will see you guys next week. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.